Time now for our keynote speaker, Maureen Manley. Now, how do I begin describing this amazing woman who's teacher, athlete, and role model? Raised in California, Maureen rode her bike down neighborhood sidewalks like any other young girl, except that at a very early age, while she was riding her bike, she imagined throngs of crowds cheering along the way as she pedaled around on the weekends or to school. As a young woman in her 20s, she became a member of the U.S. national women's cycling team and won medals in national and world cycling events. Her sights were set on the Olympics and being the best in the world. That is when MS intruded, stepped in. It changed her life forever. Now, at this point, I would like to tell the rest of her story, but she could tell it even better. Please welcome our keynote speaker, Maureen Manley.
Thank you. It's terrific to be here with you all today. You know, when I was a little girl, I would ride around the streets imagining people cheering me on. The first year I was on the U.S. cycling team, I'd write postcards home from Europe where I'd be off racing. And they all began with the same sentence, 4 words: dreams do come true. Like Dennis was saying, I did imagine people lining the roads cheering me on as a little girl. I didn't know where these images came from. It wasn't on TV, and it wasn't something I saw in the community. They just felt good, so I went with it. I had a best friend at that time, Margaret Moore. We'd eat together daily, and I'd often call her up before I'd go over to her home. And she knew the drill. I'd call her, and I'd say, "Ready?" And she'd say, "Yeah." And I'd say, "Time me." And I'd hang up the phone, I'd race off into the garage and grab my bike, and the adventures would begin. I'd race off imagining people lining the roads, cheering me on as I worked to improve my personal record between my house and hers. In 1991, I was having the best season on the U.S. cycling team. At the national championships alone, I won a gold, silver, and a bronze medal. I was flying. I had my sights set on the world championships, and I was setting myself up just right for the Olympic Games the next year. But for now, I wanted to focus on these world championships. I was the only female cyclist on the U.S. team to be chosen to ride in 2 of the world championships events, the team time trial and the road race. And I wanted to be world champion, the best in the world. It was when I was preparing for these world championships that things started to get a little weird on me. My vision when I'd ride would blur a bit. And I was sort of struggling as I rode and finding some pretty extreme fatigue. I thought, as a world-class athlete, this is stuff that you just have to work through. And then when I got back from the World Championships, I'd probably need to go and get some classes. And what I needed to do is dial myself in whatever I needed to do to get myself ready for these World Championships that were coming up, and to push through and get on the other side of this fatigue. The World Championships came and went in Stuttgart, Germany that year in 1991. And I had 2 subpar performances that left myself and the U.S. team scratching their head as to what was going on with me. The U.S. team, the women's U.S. team, went from Germany to France to race in the Women's Tour de France. So that little stage race that American guy dates that rock star. He's won a couple of times. It's the female version of what that guy's won a couple of times. And I was heading into this 2-week stage race against the best women cyclists in the world, in and out of the Pyrenees of France, exhausted. Things weren't getting better. I just thought I needed to do what I needed to do to get through this stage race, hoping that things would get better. One of the first stages of the race was a mountain stage. Perhaps you've seen it on TV, where you ride up in the mountains and through the passes. And what happened when the lead pack was charging up the mountain, I was doing everything I could to stay with the leaders. The harder I worked, the more my vision blurred. And I worked as hard as I could to stay with the leaders, and my vision blurred worse. As we crested the top of the first mountain climb, my vision had blurred so much, I lost my sight completely. And I rode my bike off the road and crashed fairly severely. What I didn't know then, that I now know, is I rode my bike off one road to begin a journey on another. I was sent back to the States, where I was soon diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Now remember, this was 1991. At that time, there were no treatments for this disease. I was underwhelmed with the choices that I had for treatment. I asked the doctor, one of the first questions out of my mouth was, "Can I still ride?" And he looked at me and the group of friends I had with me at the time, and he said, "Probably not." For a spirit like mine, probably left a little opportunity. And in 1992, going into that Olympic year, I wasn't going to just walk away without trying. So I did. I went after continuing to race and to train. But the fact of the matter is the MS was just getting worse. And I had to, as gracefully as I could, walk away from the US team in 1992, an Olympic year. And from there, I moved up to Washington, to Kirkland, where I now live. And within a year and a half's time of being one of the best female cyclists in the world, I couldn't walk unaided. I needed the assistance of a cane and usually somebody's shoulder. The world as I knew it exploded. The way that I found purpose and meaning in my life was gone. Gone. Who was I now? And where was my hope? Two questions I had every intention of finding some answers for, and they would soon begin to reveal themselves to me. Because see, it was during this time that things were really tough for me, that my vision blurred at rest. I didn't even have to exercise, it was just at rest. It blurred so badly that I couldn't even function as a sighted person. And it was at that time that I made the most powerful decision of my life. And that was to live my life. To stop trying to push MS away, and to stop trying to passively wish and hope that this thing would go away, that I got that this was my life. This is it. Blurred vision, wobbly legs and all. And this is what I had to live with. And it was my choice to move forward and not to look back. It's what I call a grasshopper moment. It's like, oh, grasshopper, acceptance. Acceptance of this disease does not take the fight away. It gives it to you. It gave it to me. And from that place of acceptance, new possibilities could spring from. But I knew, and I still know and practice to this day, as long as I'm arguing with present moment reality, an argument I've never won, try as hard as I have tried, I'm not going to win that argument. But from this place of acceptance, I can move forward. I had an experience shortly thereafter that would test my commitment and my determination to behave my promise to myself. And this experience happened after a treatment of something new that had shown up in the treatment of MS. And it was a high-dose steroid treatment that many of you that are familiar with MS know about, that has been shown to help people with active disease, to help it to mellow out. So my doctor and I said, what the heck, let's give it a try. And so we did. And it helped me. I got my vision back at rest. And my legs became stronger underneath me. Not great, but much better. And it was after this that I had this experience. I live in Kirkland, which a place that many of us now here know about. And I had an experience at a beach park there. I went out for a short walk, and I could leave my cane at home for a while now and go for these short walks. And as I walked from the parking lot down to the lake, my body temperature increased. And that was the problem back in the Tour de France. That's why my vision was blurring. My body temperature increased, and my vision blurred. And I sat down, and my legs became weaker underneath me, so I sat down on a park bench next to the lake. And I looked out across the lake to Seattle, and I couldn't see Seattle. It was all a big blur. And I sat there on that park bench, pretty overwhelmed with what had happened to my life. And then I remembered the commitment that I had to myself, the promise I had made to live my life with what it is I had to work with. And a thought went through my head that was so powerful, I don't know if I thought it or it thought me. The thought was, focus on what you can see and not on what you can't. So I brought my vision in closer where I could see just fine. I could see the park bench that I was on, I could see the concrete that it was sitting on, and I could see the water lapping up against the shore. And I could rest there. And then I looked up through the park to the road, and I knew I couldn't walk down the road, but I knew I could walk to the next bench. I knew I had a choice to move or not. And I made the choice to get up and move and walk to that next bench and sit and rest. And then look to the next bench and move, sit and rest. That was a threshold experience for me, one that would usher me out through the rest of my life. And again, the first of many, many, many times that would test my commitment and my resolve to moving forward with my life with this disease. A lot of life has happened between that experience and now. That was 12 years ago. I would get married. I'd have a child. 6 years into my diagnosis, 8 years ago, I would begin a drug therapy. Because, see, drug therapies were now becoming available for people with MS. So 6 years into it, I began a drug called Copaxone, daily injections that became a part of my life. I'd get a divorce, and then I'd go to graduate school because, you see, new visions and dreams were beginning to unfold almost since I was diagnosed with MS. And I continued to nurture these. And now I made a choice to go to graduate school, to continue to learn and to nurture, and then to eventually move out with my own career. A lot of life has happened. And what I am very happy to report is 2 and 3 summers ago, I competed in triathlons at that very beach park. Thank you. A dear friend of mine asked me 3 years ago, "Hey, Mo, do you know that there's a triathlon at the Houghton Beach Park?" And I pay attention to these kind of synchronicities in life. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt what was mine to do. Because you see, during this time, in the years between that park bench story and then, with being on drug therapy, starting drug therapy,